Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today, my special guest and I, Chris Canzoneri, are going to tackle the studio discography of the great U.S. technical epic progressive death metal band Nile. Chris, thanks for coming on the show once again. How are you doing today? So before we started taping, we were both kind of agonizing how tough this was. If you are a Nile fan, you know what we're talking about. There are no bad songs in this catalog, or bad albums, I should say, and no bad songs. And in fact, I'll say from the first album they released to the most recent, I don't know if you're going to get higher quality this consistently across a 9-album career than Nile, right? I mean, it's just...
I can't think of anybody. No.
I feel bad, you know, like the ones at the bottom of my list are fantastic albums. So it's just like you have to rank them somehow, but then I feel guilty about putting, I don't know. So I'm going to preface at least my picks with just because one sits at number 9 or 8 or 7 doesn't mean it's not a freaking great album, because it is. So it's just you have to kind of rank them. And there's a couple that I think are really at the cream of the crop here. But what a crop this is. I mean, this is, I don't know, man. Yeah. I mean, you know, you said it best before about, you know, one's an A, the other, I mean, you said it best. You might as well just reiterate what you said to me before.
I said, you know, from top to bottom here, the last place album, you know, is an A, and the first place album is an A+.
Yeah.
Very little, you know, just because something had to come in last doesn't mean it's bad. You know, it's just,
not at all.
Just less totally awesome.
Yeah, less awesome is probably the best way to say this. I mean, and for those of you who have not listened to Nile, and I know there's going to be parts of our viewership who are like, yeah, I'm not into extreme metal. I only listen to prog, or I only listen to like 70s hard rock or whatever it might be. And you're kind of afraid of death metal. I mean, I used to be one of those guys too, way back. But there's something about Nile's music. It's some of the heaviest music you'll ever hear. It's some of the most pulverizingly brutal music at times, but it's so complex. If you love progressive music with like constant time changes and blazing guitar solos and sick ass drumming, and maybe you don't like growling vocals, I get that, but I think a lot of their growls, you can understand what they're saying. And the music is big and epic. Their lyrics are all about like ancient Egyptian lore and myths and Mesopotamia and all that kind of wacky stuff. So lyrically, it's amazing stuff. Most of these are concept albums. So I don't know. I find their music so pulverizingly heavy, but yet it's so complex and brutal. I don't know. I get like warm and fuzzies listening to these guys. And it's just, but yet it's not like your typical warm and fuzzy type of music, right? But I don't know. I love them. And you see them live and you walk out of a Nile show and you're like, wow, man, it's like, what just hit me? So, so I'm going to give Chris the undeniable task of starting this off here with his number 9. And again, number 9 is, for a lot of people, probably going to be number 1, and number 9 is good in this instance, right?
Yeah.
Pretty great, I think.
The band that saved death metal.
Yes.
So my number 9, this is an album that I love. I put it here simply because I think the production just isn't quite there. I think the drums don't have quite the oomph that I like to hear from them. It was their first album on Nuclear Blast. Ithyphallic. Great album. And a great album to own. You know, it was such a cool package. The CD came with that booklet, you know, and like they had done this on a couple earlier albums, but you know, Carl writes down all this stuff about the Egyptian history and where he pulled the ideas from, and sweet package. You know, some very fast riffing on this album, some great, you know, the title track Kills. Essential Salts, another favorite, you know, an album I really love, but the production just wasn't quite there for the drums for me. So you're in last place, baby.
And you and I are on the same page. There you have it.
All right.
Ithyphallic. I also dig this album quite a lot. This album for me, when it first came out, was a little more of a grower, and this was 2007. Whereas I think some of their earlier albums kind of really hit you right off the bat. And I think it was the production. It's a little kind of claustrophobic, I think, for me. and I'm not going to go into a lot of song titles on some of these because the song titles, if we start mentioning a few of them, we'll be here for a half hour, right? Because the song titles are probably the longest song titles known to man. But I do think the songs are brutal, and like Chris said, you got to see this kind of like, you know, this package. The artwork is fantastic, and it's got a, you know, great booklet, and the booklets are always like really good because you get all this great artwork and of course the lyrics and all that kind of stuff. You know, Carl Sanders is pretty much a genius and a great guitar player. And up until the most recent album, Dallas Toller Wade was his co-lead guitar player, and they both sang, and I think they made a spectacular team. And was this Callias on drums on this album? I don't remember. Yeah. I mean, and one of the best drummers in death metal. George Callias is just absolutely outstanding. A human jackhammer. So that's my number 9. What do you got at number 8?
At number 8, I have At the Gate of Sethu, however you pronounce it.
I'll show it. Hold on. I got it here somewhere. Here we go. That bad boy right there.
Another killer album.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
I agree. My number 8. Again, I love it. This album took me a little longer to get into just because they changed vocalists. All right. So Dallas Toller Wade is gone. In comes, I forget the guy's name already.
Brian. They added 2 new Brians to the band, and I can't think of
the bass
last
player. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. Hold on. Brian Kingsland on guitar and vocals, and Brad Paris on bass. So and all 3 of them sing now. So you got the bass player, Brian, and Carl Sanders all singing. And the album is Vile Melodic Rites. It's actually one of my top. I think this was in my top 10 in 2019. All right. So it's a really, really strong album. That just goes to show you how strong the rest of this catalog is, though, right? That a top 10 release from 2019 is still going to come in at number 8, you know, and 7 more in front of it. I think it took me a little longer to get into this album because the vocals are definitely different. But once you kind of get used to not having Dallas in the music anymore or on the songs anymore, all of a sudden those punishing riffs are still there. It's still as complex as anything, and the drums are just absolutely, you know, ridiculous. And I was like, you know what, this is a kick-ass album. So that's number 8 for me. Number 7.
That's number 7 for me.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, they hit the ground running, you know, and that guy, Brian, if I recall, Dallas left in the middle of a tour, or, you know, he kind of left him in the lurch, and this guy came in quickly and was playing shows, singing the songs, playing these, you know, unbelievably complex compositions, you know, within a month or something, or a couple of weeks. You know, I think they kept it going with this album. I think his voice is a little more like traditional death metal growling.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, I agree. And I think anybody who just steps into a band like this and can learn their set list in a month, I mean, this is not easy material to play. This is really challenging stuff. So hats off to him. Where are we? Number 7, At the Gate of Sethu from 2012 is my pick. Again, another really good album, really good production on here. Tribunal of the Dead, all right, is a great tune. When My Wrath Is Done, and of course, Enduring the Eternal Molestation of Flame. I mean, just so you guys want, I mean, I'll read you a couple more song titles because these song titles are absolutely crazy. Natural Liberation of Fear Through the Ritual Deception of Death. the fiends
are those
who
like
come
literal translations of hieroglyphics?
They probably are. I don't know. It's just crazy. I mean, some of them are just like, you know, like 5 sentences long. It's just absolutely insane. But who cares? The song's crank, right? That's all that really matters. So anyway, number 6.
Number 6 for me is the debut album, Among the Catacombs of Nephrin Ka. Brutal, punishing album.
Yes, and that is also my number 6 as well.
Wow.
And I almost felt bad. I wanted to rank this a little higher, but as great as this is, man, some of the other stuff is just like Ramses Bringer of War is a killer song. Stones of Sorrow. They actually have shorter song titles on this one, believe it or not. But yeah, this is, and Chris says it perfectly, this is a absolutely brutal album. But as brutal as it is, you listen to these guitar riffs and the sweep picking and all this. I mean, it's just like, what is going on there? It's like progressive metal housed within like some of the most brutal death metal you'll ever hear.
Yeah,
crazy stuff. Stuff.
They hadn't hit a few little things that kind of fleshed out the sound for me yet.
Yeah, there are some additional things that they added to the albums that came after this, like some horns here and there and some keyboard parts, and just like there's a fleshed out nature of the music that I think was not quite there yet, but all the crazy like dizzying stuff was totally in play. But I think that they really matured like over the next album and then after that as well. So I'll let you go to your number 5.
My number 5. It's getting dark in here. What Should Not Be Unearthed, 2015.
That is my number 5. That's my number 5 as well.
Cool.
This album kills.
It does.
This album kills. Oh.
Yeah.
This I'm trying to think. This, I believe, in 2015, there was one of these releases was, I think, my favorite release of that year. I don't remember if this is it or one that's coming up. I think it's one that's coming up. But this album, I think for me, they hit on some like unearthly heaviness on this album. There are some tunes that are slow and have these just riffs that like kind of go through your asshole and just like come up through your brain and explode. They're just so heavy and grind. It's unbelievable. I remember like listening to this album, I'm like, holy crap, I didn't think this band could get any heavier. It's like they purposely like slowed things down a little bit on some of these songs and made those songs just so like, just, I don't know. Like those riffs should not be unearthed, right? They're too damn heavy. Right? It's just like, it's crazy.
He made a deal with a mummy to come up with that shit.
I guess. Yeah, exactly. It's just this unbelievable stuff. And it's like, and you know, just when you think like a band has kind of done it all, they come up with something to like kind of mix things up a little bit. And I think they kind of needed to do that here. And it's just unbelievable. Great album. Really, really great album. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, number 4.
Number 4, Those Whom the Gods Detest.
You were on the same page here. That is also my number 4. Another really heavy album.
I think George went nuts on this album. I mean, some of the stuff and the bass drum, it sounds like those trigger drums, you know, some of these bands use, and he would never do that. You know, the guy is like a fucking machine. I mean, he is. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. The title track is killer. Utterances of the Crawling Dead is just insane. It's just like, and again, if you've never heard this band before, it's just, you know, it's just there. It's just all over the place.
Exactly. Tremolo pick thing.
Yeah,
they're both doing each in a different, on a different note, so they're making a chord, and it's just like, that's Nile.
And then the solos comes in. It's just like, it's just like amazing. And then Callias is just going like absolutely berserk. And you got the different vocalists going on. It's unlike anything I've ever heard before.
This would be a good one to start with.
I absolutely think so. Yeah. This was 2009. This might actually be the one I was thinking of, which was my favorite album of that year. It's either this one or What Should Not Be Unearthed. Both of those like really like kind of were favorites of mine. And this was produced by Neil Kernan also, who is a fantastic metal producer. Worked with them a couple times. So that's a great one. All right. So we've tied the last couple. So what do you got? I have a feeling we're going to be all the same going here, but that's okay.
I think our number 1's going to be different.
Okay.
But all right, for me, number 3, Black Seeds of Vengeance. Nice progression from Amongst the Catacombs. I think this is the first album Dallas was on.
Yes,
I'm not sure he was on the first one.
No, he was not.
Yeah,
he was not. First album had a kind of a different lineup, and this also has on drums. What was his name? I forget the first. The drummer in this album. Let's not list anything in here. Well, whatever. But he was awesome too. He wasn't George, but he was awesome. Yeah. But this is also my number 3, by the way.
No kidding.
Yeah, yeah, this is quite good. And again, I think we spoke about how the first album was awesome, but kind of not hitting their stride yet. I think they basically did it here, and they would continue to get better. But I think that's probably the Nile that we all know and love going forward. So, all right, number two.
Well, I was going to say the Nile we all love and know going forward was my number two, In Their Darkened Shrines. I believe they stretched the songs out a little bit. They really started getting atmospheric. You really kind of had those stretches of the doomy, sound effects, and you felt like you just fell into a crypt and you were getting bitched out by a mummy or something. It was like you're getting lectured. All those passages with to me, that's when they really, they got it going with the whole Egypt thing. At least instrumentally and musically, they were already,
oh yeah,
but the whole package and the whole feel of the Egyptian thing.
It just came together, right? It's so epic sounding too. Yeah, I totally agree. This is also my number two as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I have to keep going back to having the two singers. So, Carl and Dallas both doing the growling thing, but like Dallas was more of like kind of like a growl and scream, and you can understand everything he was saying. And then Carl would come in like the mummy. He goes, you're not understanding anything he's saying, but it's so cool sounding. It's so evil. It definitely sounds like it's coming up from the ground or something like that. It's like you can't get any lower than that, right? So fantastic and great production on these albums. Like really good. Really good. So I guess we know where number one is, right? This is actually the tour that I saw them on for the first time, right? 2005, Annihilation of the Wicked for both of us. This is probably, for me, one of the hugest sounding death metal albums of all time. From a production standpoint, right? And I think the epic nature of the arrangements. I mean, here is where you got like those atmospheric passages thrown in. The what kind of horns were they using on these? I don't even remember. There's like a couple tunes that have that like that horn comes in and
probably like French horns or something.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And there's a couple of keyboards and spots. But so here you got George Callias, Carl Sanders, Dallas Toller Wade, and then you got Exorcism Chants and Pazuru Bowl on by some guy, and it's all sorts of stuff. Guest on here, I don't know. It's just a really cool, epic sounding album, and it's complex as hell. I mean, let's take a look at that.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty.
This might be my favorite metal album. Extreme metal for sure.
Extreme metal. I can't say I would disagree with you there. They are my favorite metal, like death metal band for what they have been for a long time. And I think for me, I was always a big Death fan. And I think once, Chuck died and Death kind of went by the wayside after that, for me, I think Nile kind of picked up and piqued my interest as a death metal band who was doing something really, really different and groundbreaking. And I tend to go for more of the more technical death metal bands than I do like a lot of I love the traditional stuff too, but I just love those big, humongous riffs and just complicated arrangements and the blazing solos and just the kind of epic nature of their songs. It just really does it for me. And there's no one heavier, I don't think.
Can't think of anybody at the moment.
No, Immolation comes close. Immolation comes close at times, But
some of those new Suffocation albums are pretty.
Those are really good too. Yeah.
Ballsy. Dying Fetus has got some bottom end on there. It's pretty chunky.
They do.
But
and I like Obscura a lot also. I think Obscura go more down the kind of like more the jazzy, even more technical and add like kind of a lot more jazz and prog. But I think there's nobody as pulverizing as these guys, in my opinion.
And they keep the technical aspects within reason. You're not in an area where you're not going to, have the brain power to follow the notes. And like I mentioned, the trigger drums earlier. You ever heard of Rings of Saturn?
Yeah.
It's cool music, but it is, humans aren't playing that.
Yeah, exactly. These guys are playing everything on these albums. I've seen them live many times, and it's just amazing. You just watch them up there, and it's just everything's spot on, absolutely spot on. So a great band. This was a cool talk because it's always great to talk about a band you love, you know?
Yep,
So,
for sure.
So for those of you out there who have never listened to Nile before, and you don't mind extreme metal, okay, maybe just haven't dove into these guys yet, I would definitely start with this one right here. But I think, you know, Chris and I both said a good starting point. What was it? Those whom the God, I'm trying to remember which one we said.
Yeah, Those Whom the Gods Detest.
Yeah. So either Annihilation of the Wicked or this bad boy right here are good places to start. I think this album is probably a little bit more approachable on first listen because this is intense. Not that that isn't, but
a lot going on.
Yeah, but they're all really great, and there is not a bad album at all in their catalog. And also, some of you are probably asking, but Pete and Chris, what about that In the Beginning album? Well, it's right here. We didn't put it in the list because it's not like a full-length album of all new material. This is actually a collection of their first two either demos or EPs. I forget what they call them, but this collects Festivals of Atonement as well as Ramses, Bringer of War. So you've got 9 tracks on here. Good early Nile. It's right along the lines of the first album. Okay, it's just they're still kind of finding their way, but still damn good. Any Nile is pretty exceptional, I think, in my opinion. So there you have it. Nile, ranking the studio albums. Curious to see what you Nile fans think and which ones you love. Put them in the comments below, and we'll see what you guys come up with. So, Chris, my friend, thanks for joining us here. We hope to have you back. Hopefully this was a good experience for you.
I'd like to thank Nile, too.
Yes.
Doing this stuff is extremely hard work.
Yes.
I mean, I follow them on Facebook. You know, you see them tracking this stuff, and I mean, it's a labor of love because these guys aren't having any hit records. You know, there's no top 20 records in death metal.
No,
you know?
No, they're not. You know, they're not making big money on these records, unfortunately.
But I really appreciate what they do.
Yeah, and you know, now during this COVID-19 thing, nobody's touring. So, and that's, you know, there's a reason why Nile is out there touring year after year after year. That's how they make their money. So, if you dig them, support them, buy some CDs. You know, download their stuff, whatever you can do to help them out. I'm sure they would greatly appreciate it because they're a hard-working band, and there's some nice guys too. So, we love them. So, all right. Well, Chris, thanks again. We hope to see you back on the show at some point. So we'll work on some stuff together, and make sure everybody visits us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. We'll see you guys all the damn time, right?
All the damn time.
No time on my arm. So
right now.
Anyway, coming up more programming. So stay tuned, right? And we'll see you guys later on. Take care. For Chris Canzoneri, I'm Pete Pardo. Have a good one.